Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on Peter Gabriel's second album from 1978, also known as self-titled, but also known as the album Scratch. Um, I'm reviewing. This is the second time Peter Gabriel's been on my channel. I reviewed his first album, and I gave it a 62 out of 100, which was a rating of good in the 60s there, on the low side of good, but still a good album nonetheless. Um, I'm going through Peter Gabriel's albums in order from beginning to end, and then also I'm going through Genesis albums from beginning to end. That should be an interesting ride. I don't know if I'll review any Phil Collins records. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Phil Collins. I don't mind his music. There's probably a song or two on every album of his that I pretty much like. I saw him in concert in 1994 with my mom when I was like 17, and I don't really mind, or 18. I don't really mind Phil Collins. In fact, I got his 45 up there fittingly. Um, Take Me Home 45 in back of playing the drums back there. Always backing up Peter Gabriel. I don't mind some Phil Collins. I have some Phil Collins here, and I don't mind him on Genesis. I just there's the I think the cheesy songs in Phil Collins' discography that everybody kind of wishes they wouldn't hear again, like Susudio or Don't Forget My Number or Can't Hurry Love. There's he did some bad ones for sure. That one with the Genesis track with the where he's talking about the Hispanic guy and he's wearing the mustache in the video. That's really awful. That'd probably get banned today for just being poor taste. And then also Land of Confusion is really bad, and uh, I Can't Walk, I Can't Dance, whatever that song was. I Can't Dance. That song was Jesus, He Knows Me. There's some really bad Genesis and Phil Collins music. It's funny as I started to name them, it got worse and worse. I was like, oh, yeah, that's even worse. Ooh, that's worse too. But yeah, but if I had to rate them in order, I like Genesis first. Or, I'm sorry, Peter Gabriel first, Genesis second, and Phil Collins a distant third. If I was to rank the bands as far as their overall music, um, but yeah, this is his second album. So look for those reviews if you're interested. I'll be doing some more Genesis reviews. But yeah, probably no Phil Collins. But this is Peter Gabriel's second album again. I feel like on this album he's trying to write a little bit more hits on this album. This album is a little bit more rock focused, but I do like the direction in a few songs. And then a few songs I feel like they're trying too hard, and then a few songs don't really do anything for me. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's probably my least favorite Peter Gabriel album, although I haven't heard his most recent one, the I.O. But this is probably my least favorite Peter Gabriel album by a good margin. I don't think this is a very good album. In fact, I just to give my score right away, I gave it 55 out of 100. It's an okay album. I can't even really say it's a pretty good album. Like I got it at 55, and that's the top of okay. I respect the direction. I think it's recorded well. Um, Robert Fripp is producing. He's on a few songs. It's got some. It's well recorded for the most part. I think it does sound very late 1970s, and kind of a like the drums and the bass are kind of hollow or kind of beefy, but it's kind of like I don't know. It's kind of a little bit muddy. But I think everything else is really recorded really well on it. It's just the song's directions and the lack of experimentivity. Is it experimentation? I guess that's called. Yeah, right. Lack of experimentation in the album kind of gives it a little bit of kind of a lesser opinion um, in my opinion. I think even though the sounds aren't very long, they aren't. They are still a little bit progressive rock to me. He's kind of coming out of the Genesis sound. It's kind of there's a few songs on there that are kind of like edging into progressive rock, but probably the harder rock and not so much the more fairy tale storytelling, whimsical kind of psychedelic side that the first album had a little bit of. This one is kind of more towards the progressive rock, the rock side, and less really psychedelic, and it's a little bit kind of going into just kind of classic rock. Um, I think there's a lot of misconceptions on that. Once Peter Gabriel went solo, he sort of left progressive rock, but there's still a little bit on his first two albums. Quite a bit. I feel like by his third album, he's kind of. I think, in my opinion, he kind of felt like the direction he was going the right way. Like he kind of sort of found his sound, and I think that kind of came with the technology, and even you go all the way to like and using the Fairlight and stuff like that, like and different musicians and Kate Bush, and it's just he seems to kind of like find his way, but it kind of seems to start on his third album, Melt, right? Yeah, Melt, and then even more so maybe on Security. But that's probably why he went on tour in that kind of started like the Peter Gabriel interest, in my opinion. And here he's kind of still trying to make some rock hits, and they just some just don't work for me. They sound very dated. It sounds like Peter Gabriel doing some rock music versus a Peter Gabriel song, and him sort of using the music towards his, which I think he's really good at, using the music for his direction instead of making sort of music geared towards something or fitting into a category. And I'm not saying he's trying to fit into a category. It's just I feel like he's trying a little too hard to make some hits on here. Like when I look at the tracks like Perspective and Animal Magic, just probably the worst songs on the album. I mean, there's a country western sort of guitar sound, and although I like the pianos in Home Sweet Home, it does have sort of like a western guitar, sound. And I know country rock was probably big by the late 70s with the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that. I don't know if he's trying to do a crossover hit there, trying to make it sound more appeasing to American fans, but just a few tracks on the end is just, and I don't really like so much On the Air either. Just when I look at the tracks I give On the Air 1 3/4 stars, I can't really say it's a good track. I like DIY a little bit better, even though it's fairly straightforward. I got 2 1/4 stars. Mother of Violence is one of my favorite tracks on here. I really like the piano. I like Gabriel. I like Peter singing. I think it is kind of like the first. I mean, maybe Salisbury Hill as well, but and and of course Here Comes the Flood are kind of like, I feel like are the beginning tracks in his solo career that sort of, you can sort of piece that towards other albums or other songs on other albums like Blood of the Eden and Love to Be Loved, and even Don't Give Up, and he's starting to do some ballads really good, and I feel like Mother of Violence is the best one on here, but not to the level of some of his better ones. But I really like the piano, and I really like the way he sings it. I give it 3 stars. A Wonderful Day in a World We Live. A Wonderful Day in a One-Way World. It's got some interesting bass sounds, and I feel like it's kind of progressing towards a better place, but I think it's a good song at 2 stars, but I can't really say much more. Just kind of pretty good. White Shadow I like a little bit better. At least I like the atmosphere. It's definitely a little bit more experimental on the sound-wise. A little longer track. In fact, the longest track on the album. 2.5 stars. Indigo has some promise too, as far as like a more pop rock song, more of a straightforward song. I gave it 2.5 stars as well. Animal Magic, I just can't do it. I gave it 1.25 stars. Maybe I was even being a little nice on that, but Exposure is my favorite track on the album. It's something different, it's something. it stands out. Like it's got some minimal kind of aggressive bass and drums, and it's got a little kind of a darker edge to it. It's different. You can tell like it stands out compared to a lot of the other stuff. It seems a little kind of old, you know. Flotsam and Jetsam's not bad. I give it 2.25 stars. Perspective just sounds like he's trying to make a hit, like 1.5 stars. And I gave Home Sweet Home 2 stars. I think it's a good track, but just that kind of Western guitar kind of throws me off. But when I think of like the opportunities of the album, really not much stands out. Like there's really no highlights. It's a lot of okay to a couple good songs. You know, I have 2 songs rated very good, but you know I got 8. Sorry, 6 that are good, and then 3 that are below good, or that are okay. I think it's the least. In some ways, it's the least adventurous Peter Gabriel album too. Although he seemed to be perfect. Okay music in a way. Like the music is fairly good in here. I think it's just the song directions and maybe none of the sounds really stand out, but it's solid as far as like being a rock album. You know, again, I think he's trying a little too hard on here. You know, maybe the only time he really is trying too hard is, you know, I can think of like Steam, and I was never a fan of Steam, and Kiss the Frog was also. If it weren't for those 2 songs, like Us is a really good song. If you don't like Us by Peter Gabriel, I think it's a very underrated album. And I think it's grown over time that people appreciate it. But Kiss the Frog and Steam are just 2 tracks on it that are eyesores. Like Steam is trying to be like Sledgehammer 2.0, and Kiss the Frog is kind of the same way. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's the videos that annoy me as well, but you know, I just don't think they're very good songs. And they're just kind of pompous and kind of, they're maybe almost too tongue in cheek and too sarcastic and so corny that they're hard to be taken seriously. And even when you look at the catchiness factor of Steam or Kiss That Frog, like they might have a good beat or maybe a familiar or catchy sort of hook to it with the horns or something. It's just, you know, it's just kind of like Peter Gabriel is just trying too hard, and I get a little bit of that in this album when it comes to like Perspective, Animal Magic, and even DIY and On the Air. They kind of they seem to just try too hard. Now the other half of the album is fairly good. You know, it's but you know I can't say it's a pretty good album. You know, I can't say it's a good album, so I gave it a 55 out of 100. I think it's well regarded by most people that it's probably the least favorite or least lowest rated Peter Gabriel album. So I'm sure I'm not saying anything that's obvious, but you really can't really fault anything on here, but you can't really pinpoint anything that really stands out. And you know, there is some good songs again, but it's just I think maybe that's the confusing thing about when not only is it just 3 albums, his first 3 albums, they're all, you know, self-titled, and so that doesn't help anyone stick out, even though they sort of had names to them. But a lot of the songs on the first 3 albums don't necessarily stand out, and they're almost like here's Peter Gabriel's first 3 albums. You know, here they are, and they don't stick out on themselves. They don't stick out by themselves. And you know, I know Melt will probably score better than Car or Scratch. Probably a little bit better, but Security I like a lot better. But you know, you got Intruder on the next album, and there's some good ones on that, so it will be more highly rated by me. But yeah, just kind of indifferent in some ways, you know, just by saying it's an okay album. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Peter Gabriel's album, his second album. I gave it a 55 out of 100. I think it's an okay album. I'm curious, what are your favorite 3 Peter Gabriel albums? Mine are probably I feel like So, even though it has probably the best songs, the most best songs, it's not really that cohesive album. I have a personal favorite with Us and Security. So I'd probably say Us one, So two and three, Security. That's probably where I'm at with my top three on Peter Gabriel. But yeah, thanks for watching, and curious what your thoughts are on this album. All right, take care.